I'm going to tell you why I now love college. I used to loathe school, and the truth is, I regret it. It is ironic in hindsight because today I fancy the notion of getting a PhD. If the admissions officers at a university I applied to reviewed my full academic history and knew I got an F in math when I was in fifth grade and knew I dropped out of college numerous times, that I was even on academic probation early in my college career, they might very well laugh at the audacity of my application to their school for their graduate program or a doctorate program. I'm not 100% certain that I will ultimately get a PhD, but at this point in time, the amount of knowledge that would bring to me is a very sexy thought. And I think very much so that that is what I would like to do. At the same time, admissions officers might find it very interesting how someone who so deeply hated anything to do with institutionalized education for so much of his life has evolved to be the kind of person who hopes to have the kind of intellect that Aristotle had, or John Locke, or Adam Smith, or Karl Marx, or Ayn Rand. I'm telling you this because I find the academic experience to be exhilarating, specifically its critical nature, and that it can spawn in individuals true expertise. Everybody who attends a university obviously has a specific personal reason for attending, and thus offers an opinion for others to consider on the value of attending a university, as not everybody needs to attend university to succeed in life and be smart. So for those of you who are wondering if you should go to college, or if your kids or grandkids should go to college, or those of you who are interested in the debate on the value of university education, as some, like I used to, view university education as dangerous to the independent mind, I'm offering you my 2 cents on the subject. When I say that the nature of the academic experience is critical, I mean in the literal sense. Professors are claiming to provide students with knowledge. Students can either mindlessly regurgitate the so-called knowledge, or they can question the legitimacy of professors' claims of knowledge. Now, I'm not suggesting that professors lie. What I am suggesting is that in questioning professors as much as possible, one becomes as knowledgeable as possible about the contexts under which such knowledge has been gained and presented to the students. And it is knowledge of context that I believe truly arouses one's curiosity and one's ability to develop the attitude of an intellectual pioneer, as I certainly aspire to do. That was a little abstract, so let me give you a concrete example here. I'm taking a comparative politics course at William Paterson University. One of the assignments I had was to explain the concept fascism. I had to explain its meaning, provide the context in which the concept was created, and then give an example of what fascism is in practice. The easy thing to do would have been to cite the textbook's definition, but the definition differed significantly from other definitions of fascism I'd read in the past. So I was curious and searched YouTube for lectures on fascism, and I read through foundational writings on fascism as well. The textbook, called Principles of Comparative Politics by Gregory S. Mahler, gave a loaded definition of fascism. Mahler said fascism was, quote, a belief that incorporates National Socialism, which usually is said to include 7 components: irrationalism, social Darwinism, nationalism, glorification of the state, the leadership principle, racism, and anti-communism. You can find that on page 42 of the book. I found this confusing because I had read a definition from the American College Dictionary, published in New York in 19 57 by Random House, brought to my attention by Ayn Rand in her essay, The New Fascism, Rule by Consensus. According to this definition, fascism is a governmental system with strong centralized power, permitting no opposition or criticism, controlling all affairs of the nation, including commercial, industrial, etc. Close quote. The first definition didn't mention anything about fascism's problem with opposition, necessarily, or its specific degree of power claiming. Why not? I realized I needed to better understand the roots of fascism, and I needed to understand it not as an ideology defined by a textbook or a dictionary, but as one defined by its actual founders and practitioners. So I did some research and discovered the essay, The Philosophical Basis of Fascism, or rather, the philosophic basis of fascism, by founding fascist philosopher Giovanni Gentile of Mussolini's fascist Italy. I apologize if I mispronounced that name. In the essay, Gentile defines three fundamental characteristics of fascism, two explicitly, one more so implicitly. These three characteristics being totalitarianism, pragmatism, by implication, for he says that fascism is not a philosophy in the strict meaning of the term, and that Mussolini correctly acted not based on firm principles necessarily, so much as whatever he believed at the time should be done based on immediate considerations. And three, the almost literal unity of the individual, even the individual conscience and consciousness, and the state. Having read that, I was surprised the textbook did not describe fascism quite in that manner. Specifically, that notion of unity between individual consciousness and conscience and the state, for that is fascism's most evil and distinct characteristic, the degree to which it seeks to control the individual's mind. I realized I needed to make sure this aspect of fascism was clearly pointed out in my explanation of it for my class. It is really the notion of questioning which I most earnestly wish to emphasize as crucial and as a requirement of stellar academic performance. And also that the only other realm in which it is essentially one's duty to question relentlessly if he or she is to succeed, is in the media. And so that environment where relentless questioning is like a requirement comforts me profoundly. I cannot help but go back in time to memories, old memories I have, back to a place where I failed to appreciate the academic experience. I failed a class once. It was a math class in particular. There were two reasons why I failed that class. One, I didn't care about math, or even school really. And two, as a consequence of not caring, I didn't study or do much of my homework. As a further result of my anti-institutionalized education attitude, I dropped out of college 3 times. I dropped out first time because I wanted to be free to write poetry and not worry about general education requirements. Ironically, while I was free to write poetry after leaving college, I still had to worry about paying rent. I dropped out of college the second time because I was psychologically unwell, to put it in the simplest, mildest terms. To be a little bit more specific, I was severely depressed, mostly as a consequence of my disbelief in the existence of college and reality. So, a metaphysical crisis, technically and philosophically. I dropped out for the third time because my father was suffering from the late stages of Parkinson's disease, and taking care of him, or at least attempting to, became my priority. In between college, I wrote and self-published a book, did everything I could to promote it, and later ran for New Jersey legislature as an independent libertarian. Ultimately, I returned to college somewhat reluctantly. I noted the cultural trend that a college degree increases the odds of a decent paying job, and I promised my wife that if I lost my run for New Jersey legislature, the job I was after, that I would return to college so I could, at the very least, get a better job while I tried later to become a politician or some kind of writer, philosophical, political, or otherwise. I was severely ashamed of attending a community college, especially at 27. I felt that I was a screw up in the eyes of all the kids just coming out of high school. At the same time I was pursuing my college education, I ran for political office 2 more times. Once for school board and once for town council. Both times I lost. I tried to succeed with other extracurricular projects, a radio show, a stint in the school newspaper, where I wrote an award-winning article. I tried with poetry, with experimental video art. Multiple times I tried to produce an enduring talk show. Unfortunately, in the midst of my most recent attempt at a talk show, my college education ultimately became more important and has prevented me from producing as much current events related material, which I originally strove for. It was really frustrating for me at first, and my college education, which I was only doing at that point because a bachelor's degree would make it easier for me to get a job. But finally, in the midst of exploring the presentation of concepts in textbooks like fascism, which I was talking to you about earlier, learned, I've embraced my identity as a student. And I now go to school. I now go to William Patterson University out of love for what I'm learning, as opposed to just getting a degree because it would help me financially. This change in me has also changed my long-term goal quite fundamentally. Just a month ago, I was enticed by the prospect of becoming a prominent voice in the media. That prospect itself has not changed so much, but my understanding of how to go about it has. A month ago, I was more in love with the journalistic approach to political opinion formation. But as a student of political science and history at William Patterson University, I've been confronted with certain theoretical and philosophical questions that I deem beyond the journalist's jurisdiction. I have found myself fascinated by Karl Marx, his influence, his influence, and the influence of Adam Smith and John Locke. I'm not interested in most of Karl Marx's ideas, but his influence interests me tremendously. Also, that of Adam Smith and John Locke and Ayn Rand, individuals I happen to like much more than Karl Marx. I happen to cherish their contributions and influence more than I do today's political pundits and columnists. This has led me to spend a lot of concentration on matters of political philosophy and the prospect of becoming a professor of political philosophy. Since I'm devoted to being a good student and since I work a full-time job, the fact is I can't expound my thoughts as often as I used to, not here on my website and on my YouTube channel. If I'm lucky though, about once a week I'll get the opportunity to share some thoughts with you and hopefully inspire you to offer me some feedback. I want you to know what I hope to achieve in my communications with you. I hope to be able to effectively share thoughts with you on 2 levels, the theoretical, philosophical, and the applicable. By that I mean I wish to share with you my opinions on matters relating to academia and also my opinions on current events as presented by the media. Ideally, I would post 2 blogs a week, one of each of these 2 concentrations. One on each of these 2 concentrations. We'll see if I can co-manage a good student performance and meaningful weekly blogging. Unfortunately, my goal with my YouTube channel and website, ultimately, my goal with my YouTube channel and my website is to talk to you and participate in a meaningful dialogue about being a student and political philosopher. We'll see how that discussion advances. In the meantime, I want to conclude by saying I look forward to an honest, open, technical discussion with you based on questions and answers to questions with unabashed appreciation for intense intellectualism. I should hope also that whether you are presently in school or out of school, that you allow me a fondness, that you allow a fondness for school and the teaching and the advancement of knowledge, and that you hold a place for that in your values. Thank you very much. Have a great week.